Good morning. It has been a busy weekend. I'll tell you what. It's Friday. Deborah Kay, always faithful servant, was picked up, and we helped hide some eggs, not very well hidden eggs, but they were scattered around Camp Canaan. Then yesterday, that night we had a rehearsal for Hannah and Anthony Valley's, Hannah Valley, that's her new name. Can you believe it? For their wedding. And then yesterday was Easter egg hunt. Started promptly at 11, and we were promptly in our car heading back to change at noon. And then we had the wedding at technically 3:05 p.m. Anthony almost passed out on the way up the steps. Yeah. He was nervous. He was sweating. He was white as a ghost. Hannah sits over there, and then Anthony is the boy that she was engaged to. They're married now. And then walked up the steps, and I'm like, where are you breathing? He goes, right here. I go, breathe, drop it down. Deep breaths. I can't feel my fingers. I'm like, that's okay. Keep breathing. Keep breathing. My vision's getting smaller and smaller. I'm like, okay, you need to breathe right now. Let's breathe. Have a prayer real quick. Let's get in there. Went up there. He's already just tears just coming down his face. And then the moment happens where all the guys walk in their suits, and all the girls walk in their dresses, and then the door closed. I'm looking at him, and he's just sitting there like this, tears flowing down his face. And then music starts, doors open, and there's his beautiful bride standing right there in the door with Robert. And he just lets it all go, and he's just tears streaming down his face, and all photographers are scrambling to get that face. And then I grab her shoulder and say, you all right, man? You all right? There she is. She walks up, hands are exchanged, they step on the platform, and then I can just see his face just relax. And then her tears start. So her face is just soaking wet, his face is soaking wet. They have their own written vows. I pull the books out, and I go, do you guys need tissues before we continue? They go, yeah, we think so. So it was a great moment. Had the reception afterwards, and they had their dance, and I almost cried when Anthony was crying when Hannah was walking down the aisle. I was like, I can't cry. It's not my wedding. I can't cry. And then at the reception, they had the first dance, and that was sweet. And then I didn't know they did this. And they had daddy-daughter dance. And Rob went up there to dance, and it was... I put my head down, and Melissa grabbed my shoulder, and she looked around, and she saw my face. She's like, oh, okay. I'm like, thankfully, I'll never have to do that with Maddie. No. Never. Never. She's never leaving. She told me she doesn't want to move out, and I go, that's fine with me, girl. You can stay all you want. If I change my mind later, can I move out? I'm like, yeah, you can, but I don't know. I have to move out in 11 years? I'm like, you don't have to. You could stay. So, anyway. All right, let's do the Apple TV, Tristan. We are in Genesis chapter 43. To change gears all the way. Can you guys feel the air conditioning doing its work? This is the best spot in the house right here. When I got here, this vent was pointing out for some unusual reason, and my first business was, turn that thing around, Todd. So here we go. All right, Genesis 43, we are... basically in verses 11 and 12. I want to go back and hit verse 11 again because if you weren't here last week, then you can't gloss over verse 11. I had two, one to give to you, but it didn't make it. I'll tell you what, bed was warm this morning, hard to get up. All right, verse 11. Then their father, Israel, or Jacob, said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man, a little balm and a little honey. gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almond. So this is the dialogue between Joseph, or Israel as he's known here in this text for the most part. Israel means what literally again? Prince of God. So who said it? Betty did? Of course she did. All right, there we go. You already knew it before I told you the answer last week, didn't you? Yeah, of course you did. All right, so Prince of God, that's when he was redubbed or renamed when he had his hip popped out of joint, wrestling with the angel of the Lord, because of course Jacob did that. So we have that conversation taking place between Jacob and talking to Joseph primarily here, because Joseph is the brother who is going to, or son who's going to be taking Benjamin with them to go back to Egypt to talk to this guy who was brutal for some reason to this family, and was saying, hey, if you come back here again to get more provisions, more wheat that we've been setting aside for 7 years, I want to see your youngest brother to make sure you're not spies. And Joseph, no doubt, was laughing the whole time. And so the suggestion was, of course, from Jacob, hey, when you go back, I know he may have overlooked taking your money from you, so bring that with you and bring extra, and then bring a little gift, a little balm and a little honey. And the application we made from that is the classic application that we make here, that when it comes to making a good impression on someone, trying to sway someone in your favor in a righteous way, a gift helps, right? So that's important. I was giving some counsel to an individual from the congregation like Wednesday or Tuesday, and we were sitting on my couch, and they said, what do I do about this situation? And my suggestion was, were you there in class? And they go, I know. And I was pulling security. I was like, of course you were. So the suggestion was, hey, sometimes if you have a rough relationship or a rocky relationship or no relationship with someone and you're trying to friend them, the idea is give a little gift to show that you mean no harm, and that can go a long way with some people. So take double the money with you, verse 12, carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. It wasn't, but maybe it was. Take also your brother and arise and go to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother, which, by the way, he's still being held captive in Egypt, which, I mean, okay. It's Joseph, wanting to hang out with his brother a little bit longer, and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. So, and that's the Hebrew version of it is what it is, all right? I don't know if you have that line in your repertoire, but that's been our motto our entire lives, apparently. It is what it is. My brother-in-law always says it is what it is. And we have a little plaque, those country plaques that have the things written in them, and it's up on our wall. It is what it is. So, hey, got to do what you got to do. Verse 15, so the men took this present. They took double the money with them and Benjamin. They arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin was with them, he said to the steward of his house, bring the men into the house, slaughter an animal, and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. Now, what does that remind you of? Prodigal son, right? I mean, that story is it's famous for a reason. Here is Joseph with all his brothers. Benjamin, his little brother from the same mother, and then the men who, when he told them that dream when he was 17 years old, that I saw that our sheaves and you were bowing down to me, and even the sun, moon, and stars were bowing down to me. His dad didn't like that second one, right? But here he is in a place, in a position, second in command, if you will, of Egypt, and he goes, yeah, we're going to have a meal together. So So the man did as Joseph told him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, it is because of the money. So they're fretting already, which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and to seize our donkeys. I mean, it's comical for us because we know the whole deal. But if you were in their sandals, and here you are coming back for a second time to Egypt to get more food because of the great famine, And there's the guy that was speaking roughly with you the first time, and he still got your brother in captivity, apparently. And you bring back little Benji to this situation. He goes, come to my house. And we're like, oh, he's going to take our donkeys. He's going to beat us up. He wants all our money. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, oh, my Lord, we came down to the first time to buy food. And we were lodging. We came to the lodging place. We opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we brought it again with us, and we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money back in our sacks. He replied, peace to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in the sacks for you. I received your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them from a prison. Okay. When the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, they washed their feet. When he had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them and bowed down to him on the ground for the second time. It's funny how God's dreams work like that. He inquired about their welfare and said, by the way, is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive? They said, your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive. They bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. He lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your youngest brother, of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son. Joseph hurried out because his compassion grew warm for his brother. He sought a place to weep. He entered his chamber and wept there. He washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, serve the food. They served him by himself, and they by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for it is an abomination to the Egyptians. They sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at each other in amazement. Well, yeah, this is a weird situation, right? The guy spoke roughly to them the first time, charged them with being spies, put them in the prison for 3 days in that dungeon. And then here they are for the second time, and he's eating with them. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs, and they drank and were merry with him. So the cat's not out of the bag yet, but the cat's pawing at the flap, right? That's the idea. All right, here we go. Chapter 44. Before we move on, any questions, comments, thoughts?
It shows how guilt can skew your perception of things.
Mm-hmm.
The perception of this is, even from the first, is we're being punished before we're getting our.
I told you the story about the getting the car washed at 2 a.m, right? Oh, remember that?
Yes.
Mac does?
Thank you, Mac.
Okay. Well, the story, the quick version is, I worked at a movie theater, and so I was a night owl, and so I had no problem staying until 4 a.m, watching movies at the theater for free. So I'd get home at like 4 or 5 a.m, and then go to bed and wake up around 11 or so, and then go back to work. So that was my year routine while Melissa had her senior year in high school. So I was doing all I could to save up money during that movie theater management experience. I got $2,000 saved away in a full year, and we burned through that in the first week. So, not sure what that says. But 2 a.m, I thought it was an appropriate time to get my truck washed. So I went to the little car wash where you scrub it yourself, you spray it down with a hose. And so I thought there was nothing strange about me washing my car at 2 a.m, but the state trooper did. So he pulled over, and he just rolled past me and did the light thing. And I was like waving at him, wearing my YRC Cinemas uniform, black pants, black shoes, and the red top. And he goes, what are you doing? I go, washing my car? He goes, I see that. Why are you doing it at 2 a.m? And I go, well, I just got out of work and wanted to wash my truck before tomorrow. He goes, okay, what's wrong with your truck? I was like, it's dirty. And he was like, no, what's wrong with it? I was like, is there something wrong with it? Because there's something wrong. What's wrong with your truck? And I go, oh, my tags are expired. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. He goes, oh, I didn't spot that. I just meant that your license plate bulb was burnt out in the back. And I go, yep. And he goes, are you going to get that tag? I go, yes, sir. He goes, have a good night. I go, you too. So, yeah, I knew it was dead. It's been dead for a while. I've gotten a couple tickets for it being dead, so I should know better, but I never do it. Okay, anyway. Then he commanded, so if you're guilty, you fess up to things that you know are bad. That's the moral of the story. Chapter 44, verse 1. Then he commanded the stewards of his house, fill each man's sack with food, as much as they can carry, put each man's money in the mouth of his sack, déjà vu, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest with his money for the grain. Now, this puzzles me a little bit. I mean, I know how it ends, so it's not quite, as dramatic as it may sound, but why do this? Well, yeah, that's my conclusion is it's the brothers. They tried to kill him. I mean, at the end of the day, he can do whatever he wants. He's second in command of Egypt of all places. They think that he's dead. But yeah, so, Benji, put my cup in there. Let's see what happens. He did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. They had gone only a short distance from the city. Now Joseph said to his steward, see those guys? Follow after the men. When you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? So they felt guilty before. Now they're going to be terrified. Is it not from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices divination? You have done evil in doing this. So I know that cup is in Benji's bag. And when you overtake him, go through their stuff, find my cup, and give him a little scare. When he overtook them, he spoke them these words. They said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money that we have found in the mouths of our sack we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die. Well, they spoke too much, didn't they? And we also will be our Lord's servants. So whoever stole some money from you, put him to death. We'll all go back and be slaves. He said, let it be as you say, for he who is found with it shall be my servant. The rest of you shall be innocent. So no, whoever stole the cup, he comes back. The rest of you can go home. Then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground. Each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the eldest, knowing it wasn't him, and ending with the youngest. The cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. The thing that they were afraid of happening the most, guess what? It happened. So Judah, verse 14, and his brothers came to Joseph's house. He was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, what deed is this that you have done? Did you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? Now, I see tongue-in-cheek here. I see a joke. We know that Joseph's a man after following Yahweh, Jehovah God. He's not practicing divination, right? He can interpret dreams, which is an ability given to him by God, but he's, again, I think, messing with them, right? Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he in whose hand the cup has been found. He said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. As for you, go up in peace to your father. So again, they're trying to beg for Benjamin's life to come back because Judah said, hey, if I don't come back with him, what's the result? Well, Jacob's going down to Sheol, but Judah said, hey, if I don't bring him back, you can kill my two oldest sons. Pretty big promise to make, right? And so they're like, well, we don't really want to do that. Verse 18, then Judah went up to him and said, oh, my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servant, saying, have you and a father and a brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father and an old man and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, right? And he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me that I may set eyes on him. We said to my lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he shall leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. We went back to your servant, my father. We told him the words of my lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we cannot go down because our youngest must go with us. Then we will go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I've never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. Now, therefore, as soon as I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. Because your servant, Judah, became a pledge of safety for the boy to the father, saying, if I don't bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Now, therefore, please, let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my lord. Let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. Now, what's the irony in all of this, obviously? Judah, of all people, the oldest brother, was concerned about what would happen to Jacob if Benji didn't come back home. Or Benjamin, right? Well, I knew a Benji growing up. That's why I keep saying Benji by mistake. His name was Benjamin. He hated Benjamin as a name, so he called him Benji all the time. He was a little dude, and he started lifting weights, and he became almost as big as some other guy I know. And so Benjamin, they're really concerned about what would happen to their father if their brother did not return home. The irony, obviously, is they thought they killed Joseph. They were concerned about that then. And then, here's the moment. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, make everyone go out from me. Then no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. So up until this point, there was the point about how he was using a translator to go from Egyptian to probably a primitive form of Hebrew when he's speaking to his brothers. He grew up, that was his mother tongue. So I imagine that he is now, said, everybody get out of here. And then he just drops into his natural mother tongue, I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive? His brothers could not answer him because they were dismayed at his presence. The guy that they were calling Lord this whole time, the one that was speaking roughly to them, the one who accused them of being spies and locked them in a dungeon for 3 days, the one who said, if you come back here, I want to see Benjamin. Benjamin was here. He's going to remain a slave, and they have to go home and tell Jacob, hey, Benjamin's a slave now in Egypt. That's Joseph this whole time. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. They came near. He said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Don't be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. And then this is a line. We've been reading all that to get to this. Why? Don't be upset at yourselves because God sent me before you to preserve life. That was how Joseph wrestled with this whole situation. Now, there's 2 things in verse 5 I want to kind of highlight. They're pretty obvious, but I'll say them anyway. First one is, how do you think the brothers felt with this great revelation that this Lord, this ruler of Pharaoh, standing before them, I am Joseph, your brother. How would they feel in that moment?
Terrified.
They've been terrified of the guy before, but now they know exactly who he is. They grew up with this 17-year-old kid, right? He's the guy standing before them. Terrified would be one feeling, sure, because it would be no issue for him to just have them executed. That's not Joseph, but that's no issue for him. How else?
They probably were almost certain that they were facing death.
Yeah. I mean, they were in a pit of their own making, right? The guy that they thought, well, let's just kill him. And then one brother said, no, Reuben's like, well, there's a slaver coming by. Let's just sell him instead. Okay, good idea. Got some pocket change for a little while. And then here they are, all these years later, and the guy that they were afraid of, who's an Egyptian, they thought, is their brother. Now, we're going to learn, as we keep reading, that their lives are not in danger. I mean, they are in the best possible position. The guy who is in charge of all the food of all the area when no one else has food is their own brother. They're going to be well taken care of. They have their own plot of land. Jacob's taking care of the rest of his life. Everything's going to be okay. But at this moment, they're going to be distressed and angry with themselves over what they did. And he knew that. So he says for them to not be distressed or angry with themselves because you sold me here. It seems like he's kind of come to peace and to terms with all the harm that was done to him by his own brothers. And then the insight is God sent me before you to preserve life. I could only be here in this moment, at this time, if you did what you did. So the first thing I want to highlight, verse 5, is that little line, don't be distressed or angry with yourselves. Have you ever held on to that feeling a little bit too long? Angry at yourself, guilty for a thing that you did? I mean, I have. If you haven't, great, you got it. I mean, no lesson needed for you. But for me, sometimes if I do a stupid thing, which I do all the time, and then I get called out on it, which I do all the time, and then I say, well, yeah, that was a dumb thing to say or to do or to not do or whatever. And people are okay. It's been forgiven. God's forgiven. But I can't seem to forgive myself. I can get stuck in that pretty easily. And then when you can't sleep at night and you're thinking about all the terrible things you've ever done, and that will give you peace to go to bed at night, then you just think, you just can't let go of it. Well, he's telling his brothers, hey, the thing you did was terrible, absolutely. Don't be dismayed or angry at yourselves. And then here's the rationale that no doubt helped Joseph be the kind of guy he was. If you didn't do what you did, I wouldn't be here saving everyone's lives. That insight, I think, is very pertinent for all of us because, I mean, our lives may not be as a dramatic roller coaster as Joseph's, but if that got him through the 2+ years in the dungeon waiting to be released on false charges, being sold by his own brothers to be a slave of Potiphar's house, and then to be in this position now, that was his perspective on things. Okay, thoughts, comments?
What gets me is how everybody talks about having a relationship, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This guy has got it.
With God?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's at the pinnacle of Egyptian authority, and it's just not affecting him. He's married to some guy's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still.
Yeah, the prophetess that she was serving didn't sway him one way or the other, as far as we know.
He didn't read just think, what conversations did he have with Jacob?
Mm-hmm.
It just settled in before he went to Egypt, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Well, we don't have a whole lot of detail about, again, the upbringing of Joseph, his education by Jacob. I mean, the patriarchal system was designed, as far as we can tell, as the oldest male of this clan or family telling all the other ones about who God is. And that was their word of mouth kind of situation. But to see him as a shining example of being righteous before God, I mean, obviously what we're reading now is in the book of Genesis, the scroll of Genesis. And it wasn't written when this was taking place. It was written after the fact. So for these details to be in such just shining light of who Joseph was, I mean, he was the guy that needed to be there for this time, for sure. Not just for his family, but for all the families, all the Egyptians as well. All right, we're going to pause here for the morning, obviously, because the bell rang for us. And the idea of letting go of that anger and guilt that we feel, and then backing away and seeing God at work in the situations in our lives for his glory and for our benefit. It's a hard thing to do when you're in it. But when you're past it, usually I can look back and say, oh, that thing happened or didn't happen because of all these things lining up. And I've mentioned how, again, when I look at this congregation, Thompson Road, talking to Brian Rogers on the phone for 2 hours, I'm like, this place doesn't exist. It can't be real. And we come and visit, we're like, it seems real. Everyone seems okay. Like, we'll see. And we get here like, oh, it is true. And so when Blaine called me, he goes, what's the deal with Thomaston Road? And I'm like, listen, man, it's not a lie. Like, I know it sounds too good to be true, but you would be a good fit here. Come join the work. And so God works in our lives. And Joseph knew it. We should know it. So, okay. Pick up here in verse 6, Lord willing, next week. You guys are dismissed for 17 minutes until worship begins.